Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am Briar Harvey. This is the Neurodiversity Media Network, and today it is my joy and delight to present to you another turning of the wheel year. And Karina is going to talk to us today about early harvest, and I think what that looks like on many levels. So I'm very excited to have this conversation today. Let's get into it.
Hi, Briar.
Hello.
So we're talking, we're at Lammas, right? Some people call it Lunasad. I can pronounce it, I think.
Yes, I think
Um,
that's right.
I think
Yes.
on good days I can spell it. Um,
Yeah.
but I but I rarely call it that. Some West Coast-ish witches and pagans call it Luz Day, Lugh, you know. Um and Lu is the Sun King, right? He's the uh golden mature, right? Maturing. He's not a teenage boy anymore like he was at, like prepubescent at Beltane, and then adulted and kinged at um summer solstice, and now he's got some age on him, some abundance of material wealth, and wisdom, right? And so some people celebrate this as sort of like the first fruits, right? um, where I live in the summertime, right, like all year I'm like, yeah, we're behind. When summer solstice comes, things go really fast, and we catch up on all of that time that we were behind in winter where I live, right? So, yeah, we're picking the first cherry tomatoes, and already sick of eating zucchini and summer squash, and waiting patient, already had some poblano peppers come in, and had our first broccoli the other day. But I'm kind of looking at this giant garden that we sort of accidentally, manically um, planted in late May, early, we were still putting things in the ground on summer solstice, right? And everything is fruiting out there. It's incredible, right? I'm so happy. It's been so good to have sun on skin and hands in dirt, and nurturing nurturing things to grow. So first fruits are definitely happening here. And I told you before we came on that I expect in another 2 weeks I will be up to my eyeballs in steaming pots and canning tomatoes and soup and salsas and chilies and all of that. So it's an abundant time of year, right? This if we're following the wheel year, right, and we planted those, we dreamt those seeds at winter solstice, and we planted them around the spring equinox, and we planted our gardens Beltane to summer solstice, and here's the fruit, right? And I'm talking about actual gardens, but I'm talking about those
And
seed dreams, right? That we in the silence and stillness of winter solstice sort of spent some time dreaming about, what do I want this next round, this next ride around the sun, this next ride on the wheel year to look like for me in all aspects in our life? What do I want my relationships to look like? What do I want my business to look like? What do I want my financial situation to look like? What do I hope the political system is going to look like? And so we spent some time dreaming, and then nurturing and remembering and feeding those dream seeds, right? Um, at summer solstice, I said, well, everything's happening now, right? All we have to do is sit back and wait. Um, and I can say for myself, in my business, I've just been like, all I have to do is sit back and wait, right? Because I worked really, really hard for like a year and a half, and I just needed to go and be in my garden and get my head together and remember who I really am. But what I learned actually having a real gardens, like a mini farm, homestead, something or other, is that, there's still a lot to do in
Weeding, weeding, weeding.
weeding, pruning, weeding, picking, like, um, yeah, grooming, keeping the pathways between the garden beds clear of
Mm.
clover because I'm allergic to bees. Um, it's been a lot, but really joyful. Um, so here we are at the first fruits. And if people have been following all along since December, I'm hoping that you'll take some time to think about what's coming to fruition now, what's ripening, what's ready to pick, what's ready to be stored, right? For those more fallow months that are coming, right? Um, what needed to be weeded, right? What did you look at and say, this isn't working, right? This isn't working for me. I have to get rid of that so that the rest of my garden can grow, right? Um, so speaking in metaphors, but I'm also asking you, like, what does that metaphor mean in your life, in all of those aspects of your life that we already sort of named, right? These fractal iterations of this wheel of the year in this time of year. What did you need to cut down? What has already been harvested, right? I was out on June 22nd harvesting mugwort, you know, and burdock and a few other things that I found because I'm actually outside on the land and noticing what's there. Um, I'm going to tell this sweet story because I think sweet stories are needed during this time. I was out by my gardens and my good neighbor, right, came down and we were chit chatting, and she saw a stalk of mugwort next to my garden bed. And she said, "Oh my God, get rid of that. Get rid of it. That stuff is invasive. It'll take over everything." And I looked at her and I said, Yeah, mugwort is invasive, but there's one stalk and I always cut it back." She goes, "I have like a field of that behind my barn." And I said, "That's medicine, right?" And she goes, "I don't know. Do you want it? Come get as much as you want." Right. And I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, like, I don't know. I wasn't thinking that I was going to go over this hill behind her barn and see acres, acres of mugwort. Like, I'm only 5'2", right? So this stuff had to be like 5'8", maybe up to 6 feet tall. And I was like, well, you could just lay down here and dream forever, right? So I brought my beautiful sickle out into the field and cut as much down as I could fit in like a big laundry basket size basket, you know, and hung it in my kitchen and processed it. And we've been using it. People have been like, I need some of that. I want some of that. Can I have some? Could you send me some? And that's been really sweet. But just that generosity of both the land and my neighbor, who had no idea that someone would be excited about acres of mugwort, right? And she's like, "You can come back, you can take more." And I was like, "Think I'm all set for now, unless I get like a drying room." um, so it's just
That's
uh,
next year.
that's oh, you don't even want to hear what my list is for next year, but um, that kind of abundance and generosity and reciprocity between people that we live near, right? And I've been talking about this for lots of this wheel year, right? Is like what's happening hyper locally, not only with the land, not only with the weather, but where are you making connections hyper locally? um we talked last time, and it was sort of this stark moment, right, where you said, well, where is our community? And I picked up my phone and I said, well, it's not actually in here, right? um and it is. I mean, we can have connections with people at a distance. I have beautiful connections with people at a distance, but now more than ever, and that means more than at summer solstice and more than at Beltane, because things are moving quick, right? And I'm talking about on a political level, and financial level, and social level, but while we have our eye on that, the climate is changing rapidly. Sunday was the hottest day on the planet on record, and then Monday broke Sunday's record, right? So here we are, and Canada is on fire again, and
And
oh,
it's
yeah,
just the beginning of August,
yeah,
y'all. It's gonna get hotter.
it's gonna get hotter. Yeah, I mean, we had AC running in my house in the first week of July, which we usually only use it for about 2 weeks in August. We have 90 to 100-degree days, sometimes over 100, and we had 2.5 weeks of that in July. You know, unbearably hot, unbearably heat. Literally walking outside from the air conditioning in my house, which is set at 72, right? And having my glasses steam up because that's how humid it was outside, right? Um, so know where you are. Again, know where you are, know who you are, know your neighbors, right? And start interacting with them and start creating some reciprocity, right? No scorekeeping, just be generous. When you're generous with people, they're generous with you, you know, and relationships are built. And, who knows? Maybe somebody's got a field full of corn that they aren't going to use, right? Or they won't be home um, to harvest. I had another neighbor call me in the beginning, early in July, and she had her dog died, and her husband, they're older, maybe 10 or maybe 12, 15 years older than me. So they lost their dog, and the husband had shingles. So he was very sick. And she said, I'm so overwhelmed, and I've got all of these raspberry bushes, and I'll cry if I just let the fruit rot on the vine, but I do not have the energy to keep up with it. Would you take care? Would you take my bushes for the summer? Come and pick all summer long. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm realizing, oh, that's another hour and a half out of my day every 2 days. Right. And now all of my stuff is coming in as well. But that reciprocity, right? That, like, I need this. It's helping me. And every time I see her, she's like, you don't know how grateful I am that you're doing this. And I'm like, you don't know how grateful I am. I'm going home with a gallon of fresh raspberries 4 times, 3 or 4 times a week, right? Like, my freezer is full. I'm making raspberries, I'm making all of the raspberry things. and making raspberry sorbet and bringing it to my neighbors, right? I can't eat it all, right? So those, I know I'm living in an agricultural community, and those kinds of things are around food, right? Are easier here. But I suspect that if you don't live in, this is the first time, these past 4 years are the first time I've lived somewhere like this where I could put roots down. And previous to that, it was always in apartment complexes or apartment buildings or a new neighborhood every year and a half, right? And very difficult to make these kinds of connections, but tried, right? Tried to be, to know who my neighbors are and to let them know who I am and what we can do for each other. Not out of greed or obligation, right? But out of care for our human neighbors, you know? Um, so what are we harvesting at this first harvest? Um, what are we harvesting? What are we giving thanks for? My t-shirt says grateful for every little thing. You can't see it. There you go. Um, and that's just how I'm feeling, you know? Um, so even if things don't feel abundant, even if things feel pinched or limited or scarce, I was just having this conversation with someone online because I'm offering a course, and I was talking about it in relationship to joy. And she said, people who are the most oppressed, um, have the reach into themselves for gratitude and for joy, right? And create joy and create spaces that are joyful and communities that are joyful, because they are, because they have to, right? So I think about the stories of people in the camps at Auschwitz, singing, right? And how many masterpieces of writing came from there, and all of the music, all of the dancing, and so many written masterpieces, um, and plays uh, that have come out of the the Black communities here in the United States that were, you know, horribly and are horribly, horribly oppressed. But those musical movements and those dances become uh, uh, appropriated as American, right? And they are American, they come from American people. But if you look into the histories of these movements, a lot of the dance and a lot of the music that we think is um, white people's is not. It was appropriated from Black people who wrote it from this place of, I have to be in joy. I have to create joy, right? Or I have to express the blues, right? Or have to express the angst through jazz and the joy through jazz, right? So in this moment, even when we are feeling like insecure about where we are as a nation, um, and where we are with regards to climate change and the political scene, um, it is so important for you to count your blessings. And I feel like first fruits, lose day, the Sun King, um, this Lammas is just a moment, right? Just a moment. I'm getting like really pale again in this weird lighting. I noticed. So can we count whatever blessings that we do have, right? Um, I think part of the scarcity of capitalism, right, is always reminding us like that there's more to be had, right? There's more to be had. There's more to be had. And to not ever settle for what you have, right? And I want to be careful here because I don't want to bypass like real poverty, right? I don't want to bypass that. I don't want to bypass real dire straits. I've lived there, right? And even in those dire straits, even in those scariest times when there was not enough, right? There was something to stop and say, well, but there's this, right? But there's this. Frenchie just slid into the room like a baseball player into third base. Yeah. Yeah. So counting blessings, giving thanks, feasting on whatever there is to feast on, right? If that's the time that we have, our families, putting our arms around people, reminding them that we love them, reminding ourselves how loved we are, um, and just I think reveling in that right now in this moment of uncertainty that is uncertain on so many levels, right? What can we give thanks for? What can we ground into? What can we celebrate in this moment? Yeah.
I think learning gratitude is probably the most important thing any witch can do.
I concur. I am on suddenly, well, not suddenly. I mean, I've been curating this for a while because I tend to avoid like social media witchy groups. And I'm reminded why every day. This morning, there was somebody who was talking about, they were sad about something. And they were like, it was somebody's fault that they were sad about something. Then they wanted to hex the person because they were sad. And they were like, I already have some of their hair. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Be sad. It's okay. It'll pass. It won't kill you. Somebody made you sad, or you're sad because of something that someone did around you or near you or to you. And so, me being who I am, I kind of said, well, maybe spiritual cleansing, instead of a hex, maybe like spiritual cleansing as a practice. And yeah, I don't think anybody responded, right? Lots of response to like, how do I hex this person who made me sad, and I'm like, geez. And so, yes, how do we get to gratitude if that's our starting place, right? Of my starting place, my knee-jerk reaction is not to say what's going on with me, right? What's going on with me? How can, and I don't mean that like, oh, I didn't sleep well last night, so that's why I'm grumpy today, right? Or but that may be it, right? Or I haven't eaten all day. Sometimes that's it for me, is I realize like, oh, I bet you if I eat something, I won't be so angry or sad. Right? But it's about like paying attention to ourselves and yeah, gratitude is a better place, right? Giving thanks is a better place. Doing spiritual cleansing is a better place. That's not to say that I disagree with hex work in any way, right? But
Sometimes it is
you
needed.
really have to deserve it, right? You really have to deserve it. You really have to have um behaved in ways that are uh I can't even think of the word because I'm in such a different headspace, but for so harmful, right? And purposefully harmful, right? That's a piece of hex work for me is somebody went by and they hadn't eaten all day, right? And they said something snarky to me. Is that purposeful? You know? Um, but I mean, I may do like a reversal. I may be like, yeah, I don't like what you're sending my way. You can have it back, right? That's not a hex. That's just like mirroring it back. Um, but as the first thing you reach for, you need some training. I'm sorry. You need some spiritual cleansing, right? You need a ritual bath. You need to like take a look, like stop looking out there and turn the mirror toward yourself. Um, that's back in the day, you know, as the crone, right? Back in the day, 35 years ago, when I was getting trained, that was the first thing we did. And it's still the first thing I do every day, right? Know yourself, right? We're back to it, right? Know yourself. Who am I? What am I doing? Why am I miserable? Why am I hexing people all the time? And if you're hexing people all the time, that's it. It really is gonna come back around, right? Like I'm not a proponent of the threefold law or the ninefold law or any of that. I don't believe I haven't met that accounting god yet who's doing that math and meeting out the equal exchange. Um, but if it's just common sense, right? If you're negative, if and always negative, then negativity is going to find you, right? Um, and I'm not encouraging people to be Pollyanna, right? In any way. Or pretend that you're not negative. If you're negative, okay, sit with that. Why? What's going on? Why am I miserable? Right? Why is my life miserable? Why do bad things keep happening to me? Right? Some of it is capitalism, right? Some of it is misogyny. Some of it is patriarchy. Some of it is white supremacy. We know all of that now, too, that it's not all me. It's like I'm swimming in this soup. I'm swimming in this toxic soup, and some of it got in me, right? But that's internal work too. We can't just say, oh, it's patriarchy. That, right? It's like we're patriarchy. We can't just say it's white supremacy. We're white supremacists, right? It's in us. So spiritual cleansing is about like looking within and owning our beauty and our brilliance and our gloriousness and our creativity and our passion and our generosity and our love and our magical our magical capacities, whatever our magic is, right? On a side note, some people's magic is hexing, right? And those are the people that like that's their job. That's what they're built for. That's who if I were to hire someone to do magic, those are the people that I would hire. Not the ones who are like, I woke up mad this morning. Where's my black candle and my pepper? Whatever. That was an aside, and now I can't get myself back to what I was saying. So owning who we are, right? Like spending a good amount of time with our soul, with our spirit, with our nature, and deciding, is this serving me? Who is this serving? Who does it serve for me to be miserable? Probably not you, probably not the people you love, probably serves your bosses, probably serves the patriarchy, probably serves capitalism, right? To keep you spiraling in negative places. So spiritual cleansing, I think we talked about it last time too, and its core, right, to my magic is sort of like, what's going on out there? How is that reflected in here? Right? What part of that thing that I'm complaining and moaning and bitching about is really because, oh no, it's in me, right? In my book Distillations, I say everything is in everything. I mean, it's like, seems like pablum, right? But it's not. It took a long time to get there, to understand everything is in everything and everyone is in everyone, right? Um, you know, how do the qualities that I'm talking about the left, right, despise in MAGA, I see that come up on the left when people say something that you don't agree with. I've seen people who I really, really respect online who are like telling telling the telling it like it is, get shut down, get their accounts canceled, right? It wasn't MAGA who did that, it was the left. Right? Those qualities that we despise are inside of us, right? And so if you think like, oh, I'm good, I've done my work, I can relax now, but you're getting mad at those people, it's such a great opportunity to go, oh, is that in here? Right? Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't be mad about it. So we're off topic on Lammas, but we go on.
Yes, and
Mm-hmm,
part of gathering first fruits
mm-hmm.
requires that we've done the work, done the weeding, done the pruning.
Prepared the ground
Correct.
before any of that even happens, right? Made a plan, prepared the ground, planted the seeds, tended those from babies, right? Turned the soil, added the compost, added the nutrients, all of that, right? And then the weeding, right? When we put our compost down from our beautiful compost from our good neighbors who got it from another good neighbor, this is from a farm. It's not out of a bag from Home Depot or something. It's from a farm. And so we added it to all of our raised beds and all of our in the ground beds. And we put all of our baby plants in there. And we had about 4 or 5 days of rain, drenching rain. And so I go out on, when the sun breaks through and I look, and all of the beds have weeds this tall, right? They are all the same species. And I'm like, what was in that compost, right? Like, I had to be so careful. There was so much of it that it literally took us 3 days to weed it out of the gardens, and having to be so careful because it was bigger and stronger than our baby plants, right? And you'd like accidentally pull up a tomato plant and be like, oh, I'm so sorry, and then like tuck it back in. But it turns out that it was, some of the compost is animal compost, right? And so I think that turns out that they were feeding their animals amaranth, which is a
Ah,
grain.
mhm.
And so we have tons of amaranth now introduced to our environment. And of course, my housemate, who just can't ever let any living thing die, it's like, that's like we looked it up. We're like, oh, that's like a grain. Like you could eat that, right? Um, and you can eat the greens. And I was like, I'm not eating any of that. no. She goes, but we should have some. So she created like a little pat. I'm like, go put that down in the corner. Do not put that near my near my vegetable beds. But the weeding is constant, right? The pulling out and the discernment of like, is that something I want to keep? Is that my tomato plant? Is that my bitty bitty asparagus shoot? Amid all of this weeding, right? And what's a weed? Right? How much of it is medicine? How much of it is edible? How much of it is invasive and dangerous to the species that are actually trying to grow? And those are questions, again, I'm talking in metaphor here about what's going on inside with our internal gardens, right? Is that mine? Did I plant that? Who planted that? Does it matter who planted it? Or does it matter that it's not serving and that it's invasive and it's starting to twist around and strangle off what I want to be growing in me, right? So pruning, weeding, cutting back, so that the growth that you want can happen. It's necessary. It's painful sometimes. Sometimes that's people. Sometimes that's communities, right? Sometimes that's long-standing goals, right? I don't know. I'm like, want very much to continue to do what I've been doing for all of these years, which is teaching and mentoring. But I'm really loving this gardening thing, and I'm really loving making food for my neighbors, and they're like, a couple of my neighbors have been like, you should talk to so-and-so. They could put that on their food truck, right? You should talk to so-and-so. I bet you could use their industrial kitchen. And I'm like, oh, this is starting to sound like a job. Right. And for me, it's always been a question of like, I want to do what I love. I want to do what I love, not to the point where I'll hate it. Right. So I'm like, yeah, if I could just make cake for the brewery when I feel like it and they want to pay me, that's great. But this is the process of what am I growing here? What am I inadvertently growing here? Like, oh, that's a grain, that all that stuff we pulled up, we could eat that if we needed to. I mean, I didn't eat one bite of it, but it also, you can eat the leaves and then it makes these big, beautiful red sort of arching things of seed that you can eat, and they feed it to animals, but people in other parts of the world eat it, right? So it's fine. And I'm like, Marta's probably right. It's probably okay to have a patch of that growing in the corner somewhere. Just like it's okay to me to have for me to have a patch of, I like to cook and give it to my neighbors. And if people want to pay me for it, I probably wouldn't say no, right? But it doesn't have to be the whole garden. It doesn't have to take over everything. So what's in your garden that is feeling invasive? What's in your garden that you're like, oh, I provided the perfect conditions, right? The perfect amount of light, the perfect amount of water, the perfect soil, the pH, the blah, blah, blah. Spray, use the stuff on it so that the cabbage bugs wouldn't eat it, whatever. And it didn't grow. Right? What do we do with that? Right? What do we do with that? So first fruits, yes, celebration, gratitude, abundance, and inventory, right? Like
Discernment.
every single one of these Sabbaths is about inventory, right? What am I doing? How is it working? Is it empowering me or disempowering me, right? Do I and the people I love, are we thriving or not, right? As a result of whatever the seeds we planted or dreamt of in the winter are. These are the questions we want to be asking. And I was thinking earlier today about this call, and I really wanted to say that, the workbooks and the way that I talk about the wheel and bring in all of these elements, right? The workbooks are a way for you to answer these questions, right? Not while you're listening to a podcast in the car or while you're making dinner or going for your run, but to sit with these questions, right? And answer them for yourselves. They're going to bring you to a kind of awareness and knowledge and wisdom that without those questions being asked, you wouldn't arrive at, right? So again, the books will be like, how do you usually feel this time of year? Right? We've been talking about land, but how's your body in the height of summer? Right? How are your allergies? How do you respond to this kind of heat? How do you respond to living in air conditioning? Right? Change your air conditioning filters, by the way, if you're using it. Change those filters. They'll make you so sick. I didn't know. I lived in Florida. I'm like, why are we sick? And they were like, I went to pay my rent and the landlord was like, you haven't picked up any filters for your air conditioning. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, well, there's always a pile of them right here because you're supposed to change them every month, right? How are you feeling? Is this a time of year when you're really active, or is it a time of year when you're slower because of the heat? What's your sleep like? How is that impacted by the weather and the climate where you are? How's your money, right? How is that impacted by this time of year, right? Is it a time when you have a lot of money going out? And if it's not right now, if you've got kids, you're thinking about it, right? Because school's starting. Sorry, it's August. What are we doing this? It's August 25th. I mean, July 25th. But that's coming, right? And if you're conscious about money, you're conscious that that's coming, that those expenses are coming. These are the kinds of things that we want to track over the years, right? So that, or to look back in time, right? Historically, is this a time of year when I get sick, break a bone, wind up in the ER, go on ginormous vacations, have a lot of money, have no money, right? Start relationships, end relationships, right? I mean, I used to warn people about, like, because I used to officiate weddings. I still can, but I just don't. Probably because I'm not really into it. I'm just not into being to the idea. So I'm probably not the best person to be like, yeah, let's bind you together forever with that cord, with the hand fasting, right? But I warned someone who was like this couple who had, at the Beltane ritual that I held, they were like the May Queen and the May King, right? And then they were getting married at Lammas. And I was like, be careful. Be careful, because you're sort of playing this role out in your real life, right? You've been working with this mythology, right? And embodying it. And yeah, it probably wasn't a good idea for them to get married at Lammas. And I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years before they were getting divorced at Samhain, right? And I told her, I said, Samhain comes, you're going to want to kill him. Like, it's it's part of the story. You know? Oh, ha, ha, ha. You take everything so literally. I'm like, yes, I do. Yes, I do. But these workbooks are to prompt you to think about this whole wheel. Not just so that you're like, well, so what? Now I have all that information. Well, now you have history. Now you have a pattern, and you can see. I do always get sick in June. Look at that. I always end relationships in October. Right? Or I always fall in love in March, right? And I'm always out of money at this time, but that time is always feels flush. And so when you can see a pattern, you're not at the mercy of the pattern anymore. You have the capacity to change the pattern. What can I do to support my health as I approach that time of year? What can I do to support my finances, right? Maybe when I feel flush, I should put some aside for that time when things get hard, right? Maybe don't, you know, make that Lammas. Just saying, you know. But we have the capacity to change long-standing patterns if we can see them. If we can see them. And the Wheel Year workbook is one series of workbooks is one way to start being able to recognize the pattern because you have it written down. Yeah. What else?
What's coming?
All right. So I told Briar I wanted to talk about this. So it's July 25th. And so what is it, Thursday? So almost 2 weeks ago, we had a near assassination. And 4 days ago, Biden said, I'm stepping down from the campaign. And 20 minutes later, announced that he was endorsing Kamala. We are living through like really historical times. Was it you, Briar, who said this is no, it wasn't. I have a friend who you two should know each other. You're like, you remind me so much of each other. But she posted, this is the part that the AP history class in 2075 is going to be the hardest. This is going to be the hardest history to understand and to keep up with and be like, how could all of that have been happening at the same time? And I often wonder what will get written out. So, I'm watching, right? Because this is one of the things I do is I watch culture. I read culture. I read future. I'm trying not to read too much into the future because everything feels so unstable right now. And the way that I do readings, right? If I read for you, if I read for me, I know that I'm only reading from the energy that's present in the moment. And as soon as something changes that, as soon as we make a decision or take an action, the reading will be different. The future will be different, right? That we should all know, like, our future is not written in stone, right? It's not woven. We are the weavers. We are the fates. We decide. Am I going to take a left here or a right, or am I going to keep going straight? Am I going to keep doing what I'm doing, or am I going to bake cakes? Right? Right? And if I do a reading with let's just use that as a particular question. If I do a reading about that, it's going to show me an uncertain future because I haven't chosen. The minute that I make a move and make a decision, then the fates start weaving that pathway. right? So I'm giving you a snapshot of what I have been noticing this week. And again, nothing is certain, right? They're talking about maybe they can get rid of JD Vance. I don't think they can legally. We're wondering who's going to be our vice presidential pick, right? So we don't have all the information, and I'm reading from my limited perspective, right? Tuesday, I think I watched a whole lot of mainstream media, right? And I'm aware I'm being propagandized too. I'm very conscious of that. They are all talking in exciting tones all the time because they want me to be excited and vote for Kamala, right? Which I'm going to. That's the choice for me, right? But I'm also listening to her, right? I'm going back, I'm listening to things that she said in the past. I'm reading about her history in the past. I'm watching what's happening on social media, not so much Facebook, because people there don't really even talk. And if they do, somebody's arguing. But like, what are people saying? What are people writing about? What are people excited about? And I was like so wound up. I didn't sleep until 4 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. It's not like me. I'm pretty like 1 o'clock, Karina. That's the latest you're allowed to stay up. But I was up that late because the energy was so big that was coming in. I was so energized, right? And I had already shut down all of the equipment and all the other voices coming in, right? Just to be like, I need to sit with this at my altar. But the waves of energy coming in, and it's not negative energy. And it occurred to me maybe later than other people, but Kamala means lotus. And Kamala is the name of many Hindu, Buddhist goddesses from that part of the world. I keep seeing people using Kali and being like, I'm with her. And I'm like, she destroys evil, but then she's still hungry. So she destroys good. And then she destroys her family. And then she destroys her nation. And then she destroys her husband. And then she destroys herself. That's Kali. So Kali is not Kamala, right? And if you're looking for Kali energy, please don't invoke that on the rest of us, because like we're living in it. We're living through it, right? There was another meme last week that said, I'm sorry, I know that we're like birthing a new world, but could we have an epidural or something? Because we're really tired and it's been a lot of pushing, right? And this morning or yesterday, I said, I think the baby's here. I think the baby's here. I think that the energy that I'm reading coming in is that we've been watching patriarchy in the violent throes, the violent fight for its life. But it's been on its deathbed, right? And it is violent, right? I'm talking in metaphor, but I'm not talking in metaphor here. The reaching back to the worst things that the patriarchy has done and being like, that sounds good. That'll work. That'll get everyone back under our control, right? Those are the movements and decisions, right, of desperation. My sense is that I am not deifying Kamala Harris. Please, let's just get that straight. She's a human being. She has flaws. She's made some terrible decisions. But I think that this person who is multiracial and female coming in at this moment when we are so threatened by supremacist patriarchy. Symbolically and energetically, right? I'm not talking about the person. I'm talking about symbols. I'm talking about energy. The minute that I heard her like accepting this thing, it was like doors blew open, right? Doors blew open. And I'm not also not a person who is ever like, that politician's going to save us, right? We got to do the work. If you are still thinking that somebody in that high of a position is going to save you, or that they're your friend, or that we should even be calling them by their first name, just saying, as a woman, we think that it's fine to just call her Kamala. And if it was anybody else, who'd be saying Biden or Trump or Harris. Just something to think about, how that misogyny that we have is so sneaky and, microaggressive. The news is reporting 44,000 Black women got on a call Sunday night within hours of that announcement. The women themselves and the organization themselves are reporting, no, there were over 90,000 people. 44 was as big as Zoom could make the space for us. And that was after somebody called somebody that they knew at Zoom, right? So these are well-connected women, right? I'll just call my friend, right? Over 90,000 people, 90,000 Black women within hours were able to organize themselves on a phone call. And I'm just like, that's also something that arises out of being deeply oppressed, right? Is the need, the necessity to be that level of networked. And white women we're not that well networked. We have networks. They're kind of loose. We fight. We don't like that one. We break off and have a whole, another group forms because we don't like how that person was doing stuff, right? But it's a negative privilege, right? To not have to be networked in that way. But I'm telling you, we have to be networked in that way. We have to get over ourselves and understand that we are in no better position than anybody else at this particular point in the game. Monday, white women tried to do it. They got, I think, 3,000 people on the Zoom, but they didn't know who to call to get a bigger room, right? And I think that the number turned out to be around 15,000, right? Which for white women with only a day's notice, and nobody had to tell, I'm sorry, I'm just going to go there. Like, nobody had to tell us what color hat to wear or what color we were supposed to wear to the event, right? We didn't even get that far in the planning. That I thought that was fair, right? Tonight, I want to say that there are at least two, of course, not one, but two different organizations running calls for white women tonight. And for those who are hearing this and are like, why are we doing that? Why are we? Because Black women have asked us to meet as white women. To be better prepared to meet with Black women when we all do get on that call, because some of us don't yet know how to behave. We need to allow women of color to lead us. They know how to network. They have had to vote for their lives, for their whole lives, not because they like somebody, right? Or they like their tone of voice, or they thought they looked great in that suit, right? They've had to vote for people to vote for their lives forever. And so they have more experience with this than we do, and we need to listen. The reason I'm getting into all of that as I'm talking about this energy thing is I'm saying 90,000 people got together within hours and made a plan and raised energy. When 90,000 people are together, there's a lot of energy happening. 50,000 Black men got together on Tuesday. Okay. So this is like a lot of momentum. Is it about Harris? Yes. But it is also about something way larger than her. And that this is an opportunity we can choose, right? Like, I'm not saying that we're going to go there, but it feels to me like that baby that we were talking about, we needing an epidural for birthing, is here, right? Is here. And now we have to decide, oh shit. Now, now what do we do? Right? Now we have potential that we didn't have a week ago when we were all, including me, walking around like this.
So, what are we going to do? Tell us what that looks like over the next couple of weeks and then the next couple of months.
I think that it means like what we've been talking about, which is to be in gratitude. And this whole thing again about know yourself, know your networks. Who are your networks? You're the network witch, Briar. Like, you taught me some magic about networks that I was like, I never would have thought of that in a million years, right? How do we network in our neighborhoods? But there's also this thing that's coming up over and over and over again about Kamala's laughter, right? A woman laughing is in joy. When I hear the little meme that comes out, like, you think you just fell from a coconut tree? Right? And I'm like, it makes me laugh every time, right? Because laughter is also contagious. It's more contagious than misery. It's more contagious than tears. It's more contagious than projections of doom and gloom forever and ever. And I think that if we can laugh together, if we can find reasons to be in joy, right? And I'm not saying like pretend you're in joy or be like, oh, what does that mean? Do I have to go to a concert? If you have to go to a concert and you can, go. Be in joy. Get that feeling in your body so that you can breathe into it, so you can expand into it, so that it becomes bigger and takes the place of the gloom and the doom and the projection of our worst nightmares onto the landscape that is not built yet. Do they have plans? Yes. Do we? What's your plan? What's our plan? For right now, I think the plan is to take back our power. And when I say power, I'm talking about life force. To not allow the same things that have always triggered us into sadness or a sense of powerlessness or a sense of despair or a sense of rage and outrage at those people, right? I saw this amazing moment the other night where a news anchor was interviewing some pundit and she said, yeah, but what about the racism and the sexism? Have you heard what they've been saying about her? And the guy was like 30, you know? And he said, that's going to happen. And he said directly to the news anchor, he said, but if you want me to come on your show for the next 4 years and be outraged every time someone says something racist, I'm not going to come on your show. I'm not going to participate in the outrage. They're going to do that. They're racists. And if we stop being outraged and just are like, and I've heard that sentiment repeated, that's a different way. So I think that we are on the very first breaths of a different way. And so when the opportunity for outrage comes knocking on your door, can you laugh instead and be like, of course they're saying that. They have nothing new to offer, but something new is happening here. So I just really wanted to give a little bit of time to this thing about like something different is coming in. And I'd rather have more people be like, let me listen for that. Let me watch for that. Let me participate in that than continuing with the doom and the gloom and the outrage and the terror.
It's
Both
the
can
JD
exist.
Vance. He's not from around here. Man, let me tell you the joy. And I ain't from around there either. But
Right?
the joy.
Yeah, he ain't never put his toes in a creek. He ain't, puts his iron pan in a dishwasher, right? Like none of that is violent, right? It's just like that is so ridiculous. And if we can laugh instead of letting it take our power away, right? As a witch, I spent a lot of years calling my power back to me from that relationship and that system and those people and that parent and this alcoholism and what happened to me when I was a teenage alcoholic, right? All of that, calling it back, calling it back, calling it back. And we have been participating in our powerlessness by giving it away to outrage, giving it away to despair, right? Giving them all this power as though they could make Project 2025 happen. What if we just go, oh, you poor dying system, go hack up a lung over there. Like, we're not doing that. That's ridiculous. And be joyful about it. Have fun with it. Make jokes about it, We didn't just fall out of a coconut tree. Right? Do you know what she's talking about there? Yeah. Her mom said we come to be who we are because we are influenced and impacted by everybody, everything, every idea, every system, every person we've loved, every person we've hated, every book we've read, every commercial we've seen, right? This is what I teach, right? We didn't just fall out of a coconut tree. We're not just here to be singular little units of capitalism. So, let us be in joy. Bayo Amakalafe said, I went to see him a couple weeks ago. He said, these times are urgent. Let's take some time. And I thought,
Yes.
all of the urgency left my body. Right? And we don't have to feel bad about it. And we don't have to feel guilty about it. We don't have to feel ashamed about it. And we don't have to listen to anybody who says that we should be in despair or outraged. We can just be giving thanks for the garden that we have in front of us right now. So that is my sermon on a Thursday afternoon.
And I was delighted to listen to every word. Okay. So, if people want to learn more about this work, what's coming for them?
This work, well, there's the workbooks, right? There's all of these podcasts and all of the guided meditations, and all of the workbooks are available on my website at thecroneherself.com under courses. Coming soon, I'm beginning August 28th, which is August 25th, which is exactly 1 month from today. I'm starting a series called Soul Doctoring. This is the first seminar in the series. It's not a workshop, it's a seminar. There is a lot of me talking. There is a lot of discussion about the lecture. There are practices and assignments and homework, right? So that's why I don't call it a workshop, right? Soul doctoring is exactly what I've been talking about this whole time. We have to look at ourselves. We have to know who we are, know how we're made, right? In my tradition, we have a very particular idea about our spiritual anatomy, how our soul is configured, and that we have 3 parts of our soul. And that, like, if they're not talking to each other, if like one thinks it's better than the other, or one is afraid or scared, we're kind of in trouble. We can't like move forward with any kind of a consistency in our life. And we certainly, well, not certainly, but you probably are a little bit like, I can't allow myself to be in joy while there's so many people suffering, right? That's one manifestation. I want to give people this awareness of how the soul is constructed and how these parts of our soul can come into communication with one another, into agreement with one another. Some people like to use the word alignment, and that's a really good word, but I think it's so overused that it means barely nothing anymore. So what if the parts of you, right, like this genius that you are, and this instinctual, intuitive, embodied being that you are, and this divine nature that you are, could actually communicate and could actually come to agreement, so that when you are at that crossroads, am I going here? Am I going there? Am I going there? That you can ask them, and you can come to an agreement that they all agree on, that all of your parts agree on, so that when you step forward, you're sure, you're certain. And then when you do a reading from that place, right, it doesn't say, well, the future's uncertain. It says, oh, you're going here, and this is what's going to happen. This is a path of healing ourselves, right? We have a habit in our culture of going to healers. Please heal me, right? And healers can do well, right? They can do a lot for us. Some have a lot of skills, but they don't maybe translate well. This is about, you have the power, and if you have the knowledge of how you're made, then you have the power to heal yourself. Right? It's good to have a community of people who are doing the same work around you. It's good to have a mentor with that work. But I think even if people just take the 101 seminar that I'm offering, that they have something to start working with, right? This isn't an overnight process. I'm still in it, right? But it's joyful work. It's some of it is weeding the garden, and that can feel painful and hard and difficult, right? I'm never going to tell people like a spiritual path is all roses. Every rose is attached to a thorn bush, right? But this is a place to begin. It's a jumping off place. This is the core of all of the work that I do. It's the core from anything that I say, anything that I write is coming from this agreement, this alignment between these 3 parts of myself. And I know when I've written or spoken something that is not, right? I may look back and go, oh, that was you getting all like, look how smart I am. right? Or that was you being all in your feelings, or that was me being in none of the parts of my soul, but all up in my ego and needing to be right, needing to be in control. So these are some of the concepts that we're going to dive into so that you become the doctor for your own soul. You become the healer for your own process and expert at what it is that you need, what your soul needs, so that you can move through even this chaotic time when an old world is dying and a new world is coming to being, and we are crushed in the middle. You can still be smiling. You can still be like, it's going to be what it is. So let me be happy right now. Soul doctoring. You can sign up. You can learn more about it on my website, thecroneherself.com. It's under courses, soul doctoring seminars. And so you can read about it there. If you have questions, email me, Facebook message me, and I'm happy to answer questions about it. But registration closes August 17th. It's 9 weeks. It's a 9-week seminar.
Okay.
Yep.
Y'all, we will leave linked for that in the show notes. If you are a paid subscriber to the Neurodiversity Media Network, you get access to the workbook. That'll be just below this recording. Karina, this was so good today.
Yay.
Y'all, thank you so much for being here. And we will see you at the next turn of the wheel.
Oh my God. We'll be going into the darkness.
We've got 2 more.
Yes.
2 more, y'all. All right. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you again